Ray, thanks for joining us. It's good to see you.
Hey, thanks so much, Jeremy. Super excited to be here as well.
Well, I think that a lot of people know who you are and what you do, but the first question is for anybody who's stumbling upon this that doesn't know about Property Meld. Just give us kind of the high-level pitch on what Property Meld does and what problems you're trying to solve.
Yeah, so great question. So in property management, maintenance is still the number one beast that I think everybody's trying to get their arms around, and it's because it's complicated. You gotta take in a work request, you gotta troubleshoot it, you gotta send the right person out, you gotta make sure it gets scheduled, make sure it gets done, make sure it gets completed, make sure residents are happy, and then get all the financial information that are pertinent to pay bills and charge investors. And so if you think about that complex thing, there's a lot in there that can be automated. And so Property Meld is a platform that automates a lot of that process and makes a great experience for everyone. And we're the largest maintenance property management software in North America. So feel pretty good about it. And it's a fun problem to solve.
All right, so I'm going to dive in a little bit, not taking you for granted. So when you talk about software for property management, is this a software that the owner subscribes to, the tenant, the property manager? What's the true kind of broker or client of this software?
So the customer is who owns the maintenance operation. So property managers are the ones fiduciarily responsible for maintenance, operationally. So they're the ones that ultimately decide on how they're going to run their maintenance operation. So that is who our customer is. Now, the thing that I will say is if you think about the term property meld, the term meld actually means to combine. And the reason that we came up with that word is because every maintenance request can potentially involve an investor approving something. It definitely is going to involve one, if not more, residents. It's going to involve a vendor. It could involve a technician. And so the term meld actually means to combine. So even though the property manager is the one who is owning that process and making that experience exceptional, it pulls in all those stakeholders into the experience and melds them together, if you will.
Absolutely. Okay. Got it. Okay. So if I'm, an investor thinking about managing a property, or I'm a property manager in charge of thousands of properties or hundreds of properties, what are the typical challenges with maintenance that you solve?
So I think if you start at the ultimate scoreboard, it's what's my return on investment on a property? So if I'm owning a property, there's only so many things that can, both add from my income and take away. So you've got your rent, which is your add. And then there's multiple line items underneath that are really important that you're trying to minimize. And so property taxes is 15% of your rent roll. Maintenance is 12.7%. Your marketing and leasing is 10%. Your vacancy is 5%. And I'm sure I'm missing one. I'm missing property insurance in there. But the idea behind it is maintenance is not only its singular line item, but it's also the number one reason residents leave. And so really the reason why is why any investor should care about maintenance is actually to manage those line items and why you ultimately care. So that's the big why. I don't know if I missed the rest of your question there, Jeremy.
No, it's a great point. I mean, very high level, it's the income and the outflow, right? And so you're helping manage the outflow. But specifically within maintenance, because obviously I think we all get that. What are the challenges about maintenance that, maybe if I just buy my next door unit tomorrow and I start renting it out and I'm taking it on my own, what am I going to miss about maintenance? I think, you might take this for granted, Ray. Let's speak in layman's terms. What am I just going to completely blow tomorrow if I just manage maintenance?
Well, here's what I will tell you. Depending on how many units you have, you can multiply that by 0.4. And that's how many service issues you're going to generate that you've got to deal with. So that means you've got to take the request, you got to try and remedy it before you send somebody out. You've got to vet who you're sending it out to make sure that they're going to get it done well and they're going to charge you a fair price. And you ultimately care about how that experience is, because the number one reason renters leave is because of maintenance outside of price. So when you think about you know the kind of volume you're going to get, and every single one of those has to have a certain amount of work done to ultimately ensure that it comes through completion at a satisfactory level. That's when you want to start considering more of a systematic approach that I think a lot of the times, if you're kind of a smaller operator, seem very easy. But after you start to manage multiple properties, that risk of not doing it well starts to get amplified. And that's when it starts becoming a financial liability as opposed to just a to-do.
Okay, so things that I might think that I can just that are easy for me, that are no problem at one-off craftsmanship level property management, start to come out of the wheels fall off at scale, right? So it's like we all know you got a kink in your tire and you're driving down the road 30 miles an hour, you even notice it. You get on the highway, you start driving. I live here in South Florida. On the highway, you drive 90 miles per hour. All of a sudden, the car's shaking and the wheels come off. So is the real solution scale? Is that what you're really offering to property managers and owners?
So, really, probably not offering that. It's more of a process that works incredibly well for everyone. So I do like the analogy, kind of, if the spinning wheel, if your wheel falls off at 5 miles an hour, it's like, oh, not a big deal. But maintenance is one of those things that you can only have to have one thing go wrong before somebody sues you for negligence, or somebody trips and breaks an arm in a property over the thing that was never licensed and insured, or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
The cost of failure in maintenance can be so high for such small instances that it almost becomes its own animal, where you have to treat it professionally and seriously out the gate, or you just end up putting yourself at a lot of liability risk outside of just the financial to manage that 12.7% line item. That's where a lot of people can get in trouble.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so what does it look like to manage maintenance professionally? Because again, I think a lot of people, that might be reading this or listening to this are not. They're just like, oh yeah, I've had to meet an AC guy out of the property, like I've done it. You know what I mean? Like, how hard is it? Like, but I know you're creating a new standard. So what are some of the traits that I might not be thinking about to manage it professionally at scale?
So what a great question, by the way. So I am very bullish on the fact that if you cannot operate at a better return at scale, like, we're in the wrong business, right? Because if you think about a landlord, let's say, who's managing themselves, they don't have a lot of buying power in terms of a vendor network, right? They're giving one job out every 2.5 months. You're not going to get the same as somebody who's giving out 500 jobs a month, right? So just in pure buying power and buying power towards legitimately vetted, insured maintenance is kind of your risk protection. The second thing that's really important is professional property managers tend to focus a lot more on preventative type care. How can they start optimizing their resources to get ahead of problems instead of behind it? As landlords, we're used to waiting till it breaks, getting a hold of us, and then moving on. But as you start looking towards the professional property management firms, they're doing things like HVAC inspections, they're testing systems early, they're winterizing, they're doing these other things that are saving a lot of money. So there's a lot of things you start to get in your ability to manage at scale that are just really incredibly difficult to do at really small volume and small, just unit count.
This is great. Ray, I mean, this is something that we talk about all the time when we're helping people sell property management in general. We use the word economies of scale all the time. Why do you buy a Costco membership, right? Costco is there to be a buyer's club. It's a crude analogy, but this is why you don't self-manage versus getting a local manager that's managing 1,000 doors. We're going to get better vendors. We're going to get, more systematic checks and balances on the maintenance that we're paying for. And we're going to deliver it in a more methodical process. Because living here in South Florida, this is just a great thing that I've really learned. We're lucky if we get a vendor to show up. I don't know what it's like where you are in South Dakota, but here in South Florida, you're lucky if you get a vendor to show up on the second or third appointment. And then imagine if you've got a tenant in that property and you're hoping that they are there, you let them in the door. It's just like the nature of actually getting, a maintenance request done is so much more complicated than I think most of us completely appreciate. Now multiply that by 100, 200, right? I think that's what you're saying, is that, that's really the problem it sounds like you're solving.
Yeah, and I will tell you, when we first started this company, and this was back in 2014, as we were formulating maintenance, when we were mapping all the different places that maintenance can go wrong, or if then statements, it looked like a rat's nest of all the different ways things can go wrong and all the different paths for maintenance. And so I think you're right. It's putting that into a process that works consistently, and you're not going, oh, aha, it's that. And then two, I will tell you, and this is a lot of things that landlords don't know, they're getting charged retail prices a lot of the times. So people make a lot more money when they're selling to one-off homeowners. They love the business, and our vendors are one of the most cherished resources we have in this country. But by working with the property manager, there's a huge price opportunity because they're able to give a consistent amount of work volume to vendors that they can support and thrive on without having to look for homeowners every once in a while. So.
Well, and Ray, I just want to go off on a little deep in here, just briefly, because I thought about your product, and I've thought about, we write these playbooks for our clients. So we think, we just talk to tons of people that do this at scale. Okay, let's put our vendor hat on. You and I are a vendor. So I'm a plumber, right? You are an HVAC person. What is the BS, I'll just say it, the bullshit that we dealing with, every, individual homeowner or one-off, right? Maybe they're there, maybe they're not. Maybe they have expectations that I can't meet. Like, as a vendor, what is the attraction or the advantage, and why would I be more responsive and discount my prices working with a professional versus like an average, Tom, Dick, and Harry?
It's what a great question, by the way. So I will tell you some of the great, and not every vendor is the same. I mean, you have super large vendor companies, and then there's a huge portion of the vendor profession that is, sub 5 employees. So just kind of keeping that in perspective, not all motivation is the same. So one of the things is they have more work than they know what to do with today. There's huge shortage in the trades, and so they get to pick their work. So the thing that's really important in what we've seen they've tended to prioritize a lot is they've only got so many hours in the day, and regardless of whether they want to be in control of their calendar and go to their kids' soccer game and make sure that they're doing it, they want to be really efficient to get work done and have a planned life and be able to go about that. And the number one pain point that a lot of vendors deal with working with people that own a rental property or a property management company is just trying to get it scheduled and get in the door and communicate it. And you can imagine, if I'm not making any money doing that, just the logistical coordination, that is really inefficient. That means I'm getting less jobs done. That means maybe I don't get to go to my kid's soccer game. It's a huge deal. So when they're working with a professional property management company that's using, some higher technology stuff, which I know there's a lot of people like, vendors going to use tech. We've got around 50,000 vendors on our platform. The big thing is it has to solve their problem. So like, you take something as simple as scheduling or coordinating. We really pride ourselves that 85% are scheduled less than 4 minutes without a phone call. That is a huge efficiency gain. So that's why vendors like working with property managers, professionals, because they ultimately have a great set of tools to get some of this done so they can be more efficient. And then the second thing is their consistent work volume. They know if they keep working with that property manager, they're going to have a certain amount of stuff break every month, that they're going to call that vendor as long as they treat them fairly.
Let's talk about that for a quick second. You just really tipped your hat on that, and I love that. So obviously, I write sales pitches all day long, Ray. This is what I do. But one of the pushbacks that I've kind of heard around Meld is like, hey, my vendors don't want to learn anything new. They don't want a new system. But what I'm really understanding, the more I talk to you and the more I talk to my clients who work with you, is we're actually making our vendors' lives a little more efficient, as you just said, right? So like you just said, what was it, like a 4-minute without a phone call? Like I don't need dispatch calling and diagnosing. Like, it's just like the lead is just showing up in my calendar. Is that what you're telling me? Is that help me sell this to a vendor on why they want to be a Property Meld vendor?
Okay, so I'll tell you, every vendor gets a work request. I need you to fix something at this house.
Yeah.
And every single one of them needs to find a way to get in the home to fix the thing. Every single one. Now, there's a parallel universe where either I've got to call the resident to try and schedule that, which is a nightmare. They don't answer the phone. You and I both know this. I don't answer phone calls that I don't get a cell phone that I know. I'm going to call again. I'm going to leave a voicemail. I also don't check voicemails. And eventually I'm going to call the property manager and say, hey, can you help me at 123 Jane Street to get inside that unit? And then that property manager is going to call, eventually get a hold of the resident. They're going to call me back again. And then I finally get a hold of the resident to schedule something. That is what they deal with today. So you can imagine if you've got the opportunity to say, instead of doing all that, which by the way, I made zero money on, I'm potentially going to make zero money before my kid's soccer game. And this makes me irritated. And now I can just sit there and either pick from some times or submit my own availability, and the system automatically schedules it in incredibly fast speed. And I skip all that. It sends all the reminders out automatically, 24-hour, 1 hour, and just make sure the resident's there. I didn't have to do anything. And I just get to do what I'm good at, which is fixing things and delighting customers. That is the difference that we try to create for our vendors on our platform.
That's a great point. I can just picture a talented, highly paid, by the way, as you just said, our vendors are right now these days are worth their weight in gold. Just sitting at the end of a street or in a driveway, ready to go, tools in hand, right, with 4 other people waiting for them to come fix their problem. So it's a great point. It's so much wasted time that too many of us don't think about. It's a really great.
And when you have a professional that you know has a good process that like eliminates those, like the proclivity to work for them is higher because it's more efficient for me in getting paid.
Yes. Great. So I'm, as a vendor, going to be more willing to reduce, work at economies of scale, right? Like the Costco method, as we talked about, because all these other people, these other 3 people that I'm working for, they're not accounting for this time that is becoming real and heavy for me, which is, hey, when can I meet you there? Are you going to be there? You know what I mean? Like all that stuff. Hey, will you pay your bill? All those things, right? Like I don't have to worry about any of that. I just literally got to show up and fix the problem, which is what we want to do. That's a great point. Okay. All right. So the other thing that I've, learned about and seen writing, playbooks for people who use Property Meld is the tenant experience. And so you actually hinted at that early in the call, and you said, it's one of the reasons that people, other than rental raises, which is just common these days, the number one reason that people move out is because they're not getting service the way they are. So what does Meld do for the tenant? How does that change their experience?
So why every investor should care about resident happiness is because when you have a lease churn, you are going to have to do what's called a turnover. And I know every investor is on here talking about it, but that is expensive. Not only do you got to inspect the property, you got to go in and clean it up, you've got to repaint, do repairs, and then relist it, remarket it, and do all that work. So when you do not have a great maintenance experience, it's one of the number one drivers. That experience is going to happen more frequently, and it is incredibly costly. So that's why everyone should care. So now you think about, how do you ultimately make a great resident experience? I'm going to give the cheat code to literally everyone here on this call so they can just fire me and they don't need to do anything. If you do things quickly and make repairs transparent so they know what's going on, you win the game. Now I know that sounds it's oversimplified, but it's hard to get things done quickly because the logistics that we've kind of aforementioned here, but the game is real, and we've even done plenty of studies and data that you have 3 days to get any sort of HVAC thing fixed. You got 4.5 days to get a plumbing thing fixed. You got 5 days to get any electrical fixed, and the ability to systematically do that well and beat those numbers means that's how much longer you don't have to do a turnover, and that's more money in your pocket. So that's why everyone should care about that.
Yes, that's great. So do you mind just elaborating some details? I've heard some stories and I've seen tech. We're being very high level, which I appreciate. But I think a lot of people that are like, well, how am I really going to make what's really going to keep my resident happy other than just getting it done fast? By the way, sidebar. Do you remember when the Patriots were like down to the Falcons in the Super Bowl, like
Oh,
30
it's the
points, and they came back?
best game I've ever watched in my
Oh,
life.
geez, worst game I ever watched as a Dolphins fan. There's a great meme where Bill Belichick had the little paper in the notebook, and then like he was like on TV and he had a little notebook, and then the meme showed what he was writing and it says score more points than the opponent. That was his like halftime message, and it's so simple, right? And then they came back and they scored, and it just makes me laugh. But like often we know what to do, right? Like you're saying, like just get it done faster. But yeah, scoring
Yes.
points in the opponent is not easy, right? So
So,
what does it look like to get it done faster?
I'll tell you this. You have to consider when getting things done fast, you have to understand all the friction points and you have to find a way to get rid of them. So with the consumer, all those are changing. And I know I'm talking high level, but I will get to the nitty gritty here. I
Yeah,
promise, Jeremy.
you got
So at
you got
a high, yeah, at a high level, the consumer is conditioned now to have an experience of they know what's going on and empowering them to manage and do their own thing. So what I mean by that is now anymore, if you try to order pizza, the vast majority of pizza orders are online. They see what's happening, they're doing them, and they're conditioned to interact when they need to interact with whatever they need to interact with. And that's how they do it. And so if you rely on things like phone calls and be like, hey, we're just calling to let you know, and we're calling to find your address where it's at, those are all logistical friction points that even pizza delivery or a taxi company or a FedEx driver that they have eliminated, and the consumer's conditioned to it. So now if you bring that to maintenance, you think about what a resident normally has to do. They call somebody or submit or email, and now they have to play the logistics game. Somebody's going to try and attempt to troubleshoot this issue with me. They're going to call me. I'm not going to answer. They're going to call me. Maybe they just dispatch it. Now they have given the work to somebody, and now we're trying to coordinate schedules. When's the last time you've just coordinated schedules by calling somebody? It's insane, right? And so you have to deliver an experience that they're used to having in so many other aspects that drives the fastest results. So in Property Meld, one of the things that we really advertise of a great experience is now they're getting the experience just like they do on Domino's Pizza Tracker, Uber, Walmart, FedEx. Like they submit it, they can communicate, schedule, see exactly where it's at, know when it's done, and be all at their fingertips. When you give them their aspect that they need to do, and there's reward mechanisms in there that compress the logistical time, that's how you end up making it faster. So I obviously not going to go into the specifics of the app on this, but that's the big gist of it.
That's crazy helpful, right? That's exactly what I was trying to understand. So again, putting myself in my consumer shoes, I just moved into a new place. I'm not familiar with Meld. I'm getting a handbook. I'm being taught what to do. Instead of a phone number, I'm being encouraged to download an app, right? Like, what's that process look like? I move in tomorrow. What do I get as the renter?
Downloading an app is a kiss of death, by the way, just so everybody knows. Last time you've downloaded, that's a friction point, by the way. You think about a friction point, you know what? I'm not going to download anything on my phone. I got 19 million. Oh, it's asking me for all these privacy things. Never mind. I'm just going to call my property manager.
Yeah.
So you can imagine it's as simple as clicking a link on that property manager's website. Either they have a Property Meld log on or a single sign on. They're in once, the system stays in. And it interacts with them via text messages or even just links that are in their text messages, and they can do everything that they need to do. No download is required. Now, here's why you, Jeremy, would be incredibly excited from the aspect of you renting. I'm guessing that you have rented before.
Honestly, I actually have not. I'm very lucky. I bought my first property when I was 20.
Okay, all right.
But I get it. I put my
okay.
What we do, I put myself in their shoes all the time. So I have
all
not.
right. So let's just pretend Jeremy Pound, your twin brother, Schmeremy, is a renter. You can imagine, especially if somebody knows that experience in the past, and if they go to a property manager that sits there and goes, hey, you know how awesome Domino's Pizza Tracker is, Uber, Lyft, and all this? By the way, we run maintenance like that here. It's like, oh, that is a sensitive time that everybody has been through. If they're a renter, you've statistically had one service issue every 2.5 months. You know the experience. And so when a property manager rolls in and be like, by the way, it's different, I'm elated. It's not that I want stuff to break. but I'm kind of excited that that's
Right.
going to be the difference in my
Yeah.
experience working with a professional.
Yeah.
Because the alternative is, and especially, I've rented in the past. I've worked with, landlords that just made me want to jump off a building with some of the archaic processes and hoops they wanted me to go through, paying rent, submitting maintenance requests. And when it becomes easy for a renter, you're just loving that experience that much more that you don't want to leave.
Totally get that. And by the way, as a homeowner, the parallels are obvious. Broken garbage disposal, AC is not functioning right. Listen, there's days where I've gone an extra 4 or 5 days for fixing the problem because I leave a voicemail, they call me back, I'm on meetings. Like, I mean,
Right.
the parallels are obvious, and what a value add as the landlord, right? The property manager to take that away. So I totally get that. And I love what you said about not having to download the app because yes, I think we all get it. We all, yes, as the company providing the service, we love to talk about our app. We think it's going to make everyone's life easy until you're the consumer and you've downloaded 7 apps in the last 4 days and you're just like, I can't keep track of this. So I think it's amazing.
And the big thing is, like, go check a lot of the ratings on them. It's just like, especially for its contentious things, it's a hard thing. It's a hard friction point.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, you're comparing this other app with our banking
Facebook,
apps, and yeah, in Facebook,
Instagram,
people that have spent
like,
billions of dollars on their app, right? And you're like, oh, you're just Joe Schmo, and you're gonna have a good app. Sure, that's gonna work well,
you would
Yeah.
you would have impressed them 15 years ago. It's but anyways, you just, the big thing is you reduce the friction to getting them what they want.
Yes.
And I want it fixed, and I want it quickly, and I want to know you're fixing it. And so the means at which that is important, and making sure that there's not additional friction in between them and what they want.
That's amazing. Okay, so we talked about why this is important to the investor, which I completely get. We're going to keep them in the property longer, right? We talked about how easy this is going to be and how much all the arguments against adoption by the tenant, which I think is an obvious one that we'd all have. Now let's talk about the roll up, the property manager, somebody managing lots of properties. I want to know what's in it for them, why this is important. What does it look like at central headquarters? Do I get analytics? Are there benefits for me? Like, let's just talk about it from a property management or large landlord standpoint.
So let's just go this direction. If I am a property management company and I'm incredibly heavily staffed, somebody is eating that bill, whether it be the property management firm themselves or the investment managed for. By the way, I just want to make sure
You sound good.
my
That's what
audio
you're about.
my audio switched real quick. Hold on one second.
No problem. You still sound good. Sound the same.
Well, give me one second.
No problem.
Okay. So what the problem is, the microphone's still correct, but the audio could go into my earbud, and so I was worried.
You stopped hearing me. Okay. Yeah, no, you're great, but
Do you want me to? I'll start over that answer if that's okay.
yeah, we'll cut that out, or we won't, but it's fine.
Perfect. No, yeah, perfect. So the big thing is when a property management company is incredibly and heavily staffed, like somebody, and let's just say overly, right? And I don't know what that is for people, but let's say it's overly. Somebody is eating that bill, either the owner of that property management company or the investors that they manage for. One of the two is eating it, right? Because the money is not going to manufacture itself out of the thin air. So when you think about what's in it for the property management firm, if I'm able to operate at an advantage of cost, and I am able to operate at lower cost and still deliver a great service level, that is a huge advantage, either individually for my reinvestment in the company, or B, I'm able to actually offer more discounted pricing and still make equal profit on there. So usually at Property Meld, we pride ourselves at either doubling or tripling the capacity of maintenance coordinators, increasing technician throughput by 35%. Obviously, the vendor network, we've really helped corral that resource. It's a huge advantage that makes us more competitive as a property management firm, that we can then decide how we want to use that advantage in the market, either by being more defensible on cost, or obviously being able to capture that profit or even reinvest in the business for scaling.
Are there that makes me immediately want to ask this follow-up question. Are there symptoms that somebody might be going through right now on a property management side where they should maybe think Meld might help us in terms of cost or problems or turnover? What are some symptoms that are like, hey, maybe I should just go look at this Meld thing?
So the best indicators any property management firm can look at, speed of repair and satisfaction. Google reviews do not count. Like, that is a marketing management thing, that you can bury bad reviews with good, but your true health of maintenance operation means you're surveying after every single service issue. That and your speed. Those are two of the best indicators that tell you you at least have quality under control. And if those two become problematic, that is the point you need to say, okay, I need to go figure this out. There's interesting stats and data points that ultimately point to when that usually happens, like after you get to a certain amount of doors and you don't have enough people, or how many coordinators per door. Usually we'll find the quality drop against your cost. So the big thing is start at your service level agreement, which is how fast you're keeping the renters happy. That's a minimum, table stakes. And then you go down, and the resourcing required to do that, you want to make sure that you're obviously staffing appropriate for that. But I would say those top two metrics are the best indicators to tell you, like, I need to go figure this out. And if you don't have those measurements, that's also, I would probably jump right on that.
That was it.
It's
you literally teed me up. I was going to ask you. I'm like, if I wasn't a Meld customer, how would I even measure that? Is that possible? You know, like, how are people measuring that today that may be extra work for them?
It's a bit difficult, and it probably shouldn't be, but it's a bit difficult. But some people have figured out ways outside of Meld. Obviously, we give more. I'm biased, but
Sure.
we give immense visibility into the maintenance operation that's far beyond those two metrics: vendor health scores, technician utilization rates, annual maintenance spend per unit, every metric that contributes to those. But if you're somebody who's just trying to get those two, you can pull a work order reports out of your system every month and send it to your Excel guru and have them subtract cells, add cells to just find your speed of repair. Satisfaction, I would find another tool, ultimately a surveying tool that is somehow triggered or initiated automatically after a completion of the work order. I don't know a lot that are built well in there, but those are two ways that you could figure out where you're at if you don't. And I have seen people do that.
That's one of the things that, and the reason I asked that question, Ray, is that one of the things I've heard is people are like, I now know how to manage things I didn't even know how to manage before. I think that's something we do for our customers, and a lot of good vendors do that. And it shouldn't be dismissed. So do you mind just giving me those stats again? Vendor utilization rate, what were those?
There's 5 great metrics and KPIs that everybody should pay attention to. Speed of repair, that is one of the best leading indicators for resident satisfaction. Resident satisfaction is one of the best leading indicators for resident renewal rate. Annual maintenance spend annually. So how much are you spending in maintenance just servicing the properties? That's an indicator of, are you going to start, pissing off landlords, investors, all that sort of stuff. It's kind of like, how cost effective are you delivering it? You have vendor health score. How healthy is your vendor network? And that's basically a really, like, are they doing the work quickly? Are they making your residents happy? Or are you getting priced fairly? And then there's technician utilization rate. How busy is my technician team and what I'm keeping them? That's making sure that I can operate them at a decent margin and not having to pass too much cost through to my investors. So those are the 5 that are really good, that we put a huge emphasis at Property Meld on. That usually, if you're running those 5 really well, you're running a great business and you're giving great returns to your investors.
Thanks for detailing those. And so, as you mentioned, the technician utilization rate. So, am I correct in assuming that if I've got my own in-house maintenance team, Meld is still a solution that can help me if I've reached that scale?
Yeah, absolutely. And we start seeing people run internal technicians even as early as 150 units. And it's a big deal to get that throughput right. because technicians can either be a huge advantage for your property management firm or a huge drag on your P&L. So as soon as you do get technicians, get that visibility, because that's the only way you know if you're getting what you need out of that group. That's going to allow you to be profitable. And again, it can be a huge competitive advantage if done well.
Great. Thanks for keying on. And this may be a simple answer, but I see the value in Meld if I'm using third-party vendors. But if I'm all in on maintenance and I've got my own maintenance team and I want to run that, that's its own revenue center, is Meld still a good solution for me?
Yeah, some of our largest customers, and we're seeing more operate internal technician teams, just because if you think about it, it's a vertical integration of your property management business, a partial vertical integration. Yeah. Vendors always have a home. You're always going to need certain vendors. And I could spend more time on it, but you don't want 100% internal technicians. You want to blend, but it's a vertical integration. So we built our platform that way. And usually when you tend to get real, like large in scale, there's just too much opportunity to not. So yeah, absolutely. Our platform manages both.
Fantastic. Okay. So if I've got like a target and I'm optimizing my property management company for, the holy grail, either that is in terms of being the most competitive and the solution that our clients can't say no to, or being the most profitable. And I know it's going to vary by size, but do you have like some general like recommendations, Ray? Like if I'm running my own company, do I want to be optimizing for maintenance in-house? Do I want vendors? Like what tips can you give me to make sure that I'm making my business most competitive and most profitable from a maintenance standpoint?
I actually, and this is relatively new of thought process, working with some other great leaders in some of our great customers in the property management space. There's 3 ultimate scorecard metric numbers that if you're doing well, like you're winning the game. So one is resident satisfaction, and because that is ultimately, it doesn't matter if you manage your own assets, you manage for somebody else, having resident renewals is a big deal. So that's one. 2, the annual maintenance spend per unit. How well are you picking your vendors, managing your technicians, to like just managing costs like of the repairs themselves? And then 3, what is ultimately your cost to facilitate that entire operation? And so what you're doing is you're trying to get 2, like those good ones are the health, 3 is your efficiency, and to deliver those. And so that can be kind of really high level at some of those, but that is the game. And that's what helps you decide and make decisions. Well, is it my vendors costing me a ton, or is it my internal? Am I prepared to invest in that or not? But any decision that you have below that ultimately impacts those 3. And so those are the guiding lenses that I think people make decisions on. Should I do preventative? Should I invest in that? What about, every decision you make should impact those 3 things. And so that's the lens.
So are you really recommending that they understand the game, the rules, and how to optimize for that? And then we're open that different people in different markets with different types of portfolios are going to optimize differently to maximize those numbers?
I would say there's not a cookie cutter answer yet. And I will give you one perfectly great example. If you're in Chicago, and depending on where your units are at, it might be very inefficient, to send a technician up and down 94. It might make more sense to have locally placed vendors. Mm-hmm. That's a variable in itself. Regulations is another variable. And then, and labor prices and costs in your market for different things. And so it's not a simple answer for everyone, or else hopefully we'd just write the book on that. But everybody operates differently to optimize those top numbers, but that's some of the variables that exist that can change your operation model.
And obviously the software and the solution you have is going to help you get your arms wrapped around that, run models on that, or try things, and then be able to keep score.
Yep. It solves your engagement efficiency, scheduling efficiency, staffing efficiency out the gate. And then everyone can look at and go, what's the scorecard and what do I need to make better that's going to even make me more competitive? That's what Property Meld does.
Excellent. Okay. What's next for you, Ray? I mean, what do you see next for the product and the solution, or what problem are you trying to solve next?
So we've got some really stuff that we're exciting stuff that we're announcing in this next quarter. We've obviously announced we try to be people that are ahead of the curve, but I'll tell you, one of the things we're going to continue to double down on is the data set that Property Meld uniquely captures that can continue to optimize process. So we've all heard of the excitement of AI and what it can feasibly do, but one of the things that's really needed to make great decisions is great, clean data. And so we're really looking at the opportunities that we can help customers impact the 5 key metrics as we talk about by leveraging some of the data in there. Insights and Insights Pro is a product that we released, but the more and more that we can get to the point of helping property managers make decisions, helping frontline people choose between A and B in a scenario of choice that optimizes it for the investor, that's where we're going to continue to invest in. And so a lot of AI stuff, we've got a lot of continued communication improvements, automatic translation tools are dropping. And our big thing is we're really going to make a run at preventative maintenance and try and get more property management firms to have a much larger percentage of their work caught ahead. It's a lot cheaper that way. So,
all right. So I avoided this question earlier because we got off the topic, but I was hearing about preventative. So when you're talking about helping them understand, you're basically saying is it better to wait for a catastrophic event, or is it better to fix it, right? And at scale, if I've got 50 properties, do I need to start thinking of my vehicles like an Amazon fleet, and I'm better off never having downtime and I'm better off like fixing things? Or is it I'm self-insuring and I'm just going to wait until things go wrong, right? Is that what you're saying? With it kind of giving me a choice A or B, you're going to help me model that?
So A or B is usually, do you replace or repair, right? As an A and B,
Okay.
sometimes those are hard. Now, that being said, like the nice thing is we're not copying anything that's not been established in the industry. It is by far, everyone knows that if you say, should you wait till something breaks or be preventative? It's like, we've learned that preventative health is really a good idea. Preventative car care is a really good idea. We know that preventative home care is a really good idea. And so the thing that gets difficult, or where I think we're uniquely positioned to do, is what should you do that is preventative that's actually going to move the needle.
Mm-hmm.
And it took engineers a long time on cars to figure out oil changes and transmission changes, like transmission oil changes. They got like what you should do. And so I think maintenance, that's the thing of what you should do, becomes incredibly important to optimize that return for your investors. And it's way cheaper to fix air conditioner in March than it is in July. So it's a double whammy. Everybody likes to be ahead of problems.
Yes. Well, Ray, I really appreciate it. Is there anything I didn't ask you or anything you want to add?
I think property management, is ultimately headed towards driving way more efficiency at scale that has probably historically been done. And so I would say if you're an investor and you're kind of on the fence about some of those things, you should really check out your property managers, what they're capable of today than what they were 5 years ago, because a lot has changed and the deltas between returns are starting to become a lot more evident. So I think that's probably the aha just coming into the industry for me and seeing where it is today versus where it was. It's a different industry very quickly.
Yeah, and it is a big delta. We talk about this all the time. One of the things I go to these investment conferences, Ray, maybe you've gone to, and you say, hey, I help property managers, and like I get these looks and they're just like, oh boy. And I'm like, no, trust me, the difference between a great property manager and an average property manager is enormous. You know what I mean? Like it is undescribable when you actually work with somebody that knows what they're doing.
And the difference between an average property manager and no property manager can also be pretty catastrophic too. So anyways, yeah.
Yes. Well, thanks for the time, Ray. I think this is a great share. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for having me, Jeremy.
Anytime.